This security footage shows the moment a father walked into his son's room and discovered something that would destroy everything he thought he knew about his family. 7-year-old Ethan Carter had just failed his 4th consecutive math test. His millionaire father Lucas was about to make a decision that would change 3 lives forever. What Lucas didn't know was that the person who would save his son was the one person he'd never considered. Someone he paid $15 an hour to clean his toilets. Here's what nobody saw coming. This wasn't just about math. This was about a secret that would expose the dark truth about success, failure, and who really holds the power in America's wealthiest homes. What you're about to see will change how you view intelligence forever. The date was September 15th, 2023. Inside a $12 million mansion in Westchester County, New York, a crisis was unfolding that would shake the foundations of one of America's most successful families. Lucas Carter, CEO of Carter Financial Holdings, had built his empire through ruthless determination and an unwavering belief that money could solve any problem. His net worth exceeded $200 million. His son Ethan was failing elementary math. For a man who had conquered Wall Street, this was unthinkable. But what happened next would prove that sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most unexpected sources. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand how we got here, you need to know who Lucas Carter really was. Born in Detroit to a single mother who worked 3 jobs, Lucas learned early that success was earned through blood, sweat, and tears. He studied 18 hours a day to earn a scholarship to Harvard Business School. He slept 4 hours a night for the first 10 years of his career. By age 35, he owned his own investment firm. By 40, he was managing billions. When his wife Sarah died in a car accident 3 years earlier, Lucas made a sacred promise standing over her grave. His son would never struggle like he did. Money would be the solution to every problem Ethan would ever face. Ethan Carter attended Riverside Academy, where tuition cost $60,000 per year. His private math tutor charged $300 per hour. His learning specialist cost $500. His educational consultant cost $750. In total, Lucas spent over $100,000 annually on his son's education. Yet Ethan continued to fail. His teachers described him as bright but unfocused. His tutors called him lazy. His father was running out of patience. What none of them understood was that Ethan's mind worked differently. While other children saw numbers as abstract symbols, Ethan saw stories. Where others memorized formulas, Ethan needed to understand the why behind every equation. This wasn't a learning disability. This was a gift that nobody recognized. Maya Rodriguez had been cleaning the Carter mansion for 2 years. She arrived every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 in the morning and left at 4 in the afternoon. She earned $15 an hour plus a small Christmas bonus. Lucas barely acknowledged her existence. To him, she was invisible labor, part of the background of his successful life. What Lucas didn't know was that Maya held a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Queens College. She had taught 3rd grade for 5 years before her husband left her with 3 children and no child support. Cleaning houses paid better than substitute teaching, and the flexible schedule let her care for her own kids. But Maya never stopped being a teacher at heart. The confrontation happened on a Thursday evening in October. Lucas had just returned from a business dinner when he found Ethan at the kitchen table, crying over his math homework. The worksheet was covered in eraser marks and frustrated scribbles. This was the night everything changed. Lucas exploded with a rage that had been building for months. His voice echoed through the marble hallways as he screamed about wasted money, failed tutors, and his son's apparent inability to grasp simple concepts. The words he said next would haunt him for years. He told his 7-year-old son that maybe some people just weren't smart enough for success. Maybe Ethan would never amount to anything, just like the people Lucas had left behind in Detroit. Maybe throwing money at the problem was pointless because you can't fix stupid. Maya was cleaning the upstairs bathroom when Lucas's voice carried through the house. Every word hit her like a physical blow. She had heard similar words before, directed at her own children by teachers who didn't understand their potential. She had felt the crushing weight of being dismissed because of her accent, her background, her economic status. As Lucas's tirade continued, Maya made a decision that would risk her job, her income, and her family's stability. She couldn't stand by and watch another child's spirit be broken by adults who confused intelligence with compliance. That night, after Lucas left for a week-long business trip to London, Maya began planning something that would either save Ethan's future or destroy her own. Maya's approach was revolutionary in its simplicity. Instead of forcing Ethan to adapt to traditional teaching methods, she would adapt the methods to match how his mind actually worked. She spent hours researching kinesthetic learning, visual processing, and alternative mathematics instruction. She studied Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences and Maria Montessori's hands-on educational philosophy. Most importantly, she observed Ethan closely, noting how he doodled patterns in the margins of his worksheets, how he arranged his toys in complex geometric formations, how he could instantly see which puzzle pieces fit together. Maya realized that Ethan wasn't struggling because he lacked mathematical ability. He was struggling because nobody had ever taught math in a way that made sense to his unique brain. On Monday morning, while Lucas was negotiating deals in London, Maya approached Ethan with a simple question. She asked if he wanted to play a game that involved a little bit of math. Using materials from around the house, Maya began constructing lessons that turned abstract mathematical concepts into tangible experiences. Addition became building towers with colored blocks. Subtraction became removing pieces from completed puzzles. Multiplication transformed into creating patterns with bottle caps and coins. Division became fairly distributing candy among stuffed animals. For the first time in his academic life, Ethan began to understand that math wasn't a series of arbitrary rules to memorize. It was a language for describing the patterns and relationships he instinctively noticed in the world around him. By Wednesday, something extraordinary was happening. Ethan was not only completing his math homework without tears, he was asking for more problems to solve. He created his own addition games using his toy cars. He invented subtraction stories featuring his action figures. He discovered that the multiplication tables weren't random numbers, but predictable patterns that repeated and connected in fascinating ways. Maya documented every breakthrough, every moment of understanding, every flash of mathematical insight. She knew that Lucas would return soon, and she needed proof that her methods weren't just entertainment, but genuine education. More importantly, she needed evidence that his son possessed a brilliant mathematical mind that had been hidden by inappropriate teaching methods. Thursday brought Ethan's next scheduled math assessment. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had prepared for another disappointing performance. Instead, she witnessed something that challenged her 20-year career in education. Ethan approached each problem with confidence and creativity. He drew pictures to solve word problems. He used his fingers to count through complex calculations. He even invented his own methods for checking his answers. When the results came back, Mrs. Patterson had to look twice. Not only had Ethan passed, he had scored 96%, higher than any previous test in his academic career. Mrs. Patterson immediately called Lucas's office, leaving a message that would change everything. She said that whatever was happening at home was working miracles, and she needed to know what had changed. Lucas returned from London on Friday evening, exhausted but satisfied with the deals he had closed. The last thing he expected was good news about his son's academic performance. Mrs. Patterson's message seemed impossible. How could Ethan suddenly excel at math when nothing had changed in his tutoring schedule? Lucas reviewed the educational expenses from the past week. No additional tutoring sessions, no new learning materials, no expensive interventions. Confused but curious, he decided to observe his son more closely. What he found challenged every assumption he had made about intelligence, education, and the value of expensive solutions to complex problems. Saturday morning, Lucas heard unusual sounds coming from the kitchen. Instead of the typical sounds of struggle and frustration that accompanied homework time, he heard laughter. Genuine, joyful laughter mixed with animated conversation about numbers and patterns. Investigating the source of this unprecedented development, Lucas discovered Maya and Ethan seated at the kitchen island, surrounded by an array of household objects arranged in mathematical formations. Bottle caps formed multiplication arrays. Colored pasta pieces demonstrated fractions. Wooden spoons became measuring tools for geometry problems. His son was explaining mathematical concepts with an enthusiasm Lucas had never witnessed. For a moment, Lucas felt a surge of gratitude toward Maya. Then reality set in, and gratitude transformed into something much more complex. Lucas's initial reaction was not gratitude, but fury. In his mind, Maya had overstepped her boundaries in the most fundamental way possible. She was the hired help, paid to clean and organize, not to educate his child. Her unauthorized intervention felt like a violation of his authority as both employer and father. More disturbing was the implication that a housekeeper with no formal credentials had succeeded where Harvard-educated tutors had failed. This challenged Lucas's core beliefs about expertise, credentials, and the correlation between cost and quality. His explosion was immediate and devastating. He accused Maya of manipulating his son, of undermining his parental authority, of presuming to know better than trained professionals. He threatened to fire her immediately and ensure she never worked in a respectable household again. What happened next would replay in Lucas's memory for years to come. 7-year-old Ethan Carter, who had never once defended himself against his father's criticism, stood up and spoke with a clarity that stunned everyone in the room. He told his father that Maya had never made him feel stupid. She had never called him lazy or incapable. She had shown him that his way of thinking wasn't wrong, just different. Most powerfully, Ethan said that for the first time in his life, he felt smart. These words hit Lucas with devastating force. He realized that in his obsession with fixing his son, he had been breaking him instead. His expensive solutions had been addressing the wrong problem entirely. The issue wasn't Ethan's intelligence or ability. The issue was that nobody, including his own father, had bothered to understand how his mind actually worked. Standing in his kitchen, surrounded by simple household objects that had accomplished what thousands of dollars couldn't, Lucas experienced a moment of profound humiliation and revelation. Maya had done more than teach his son math. She had revealed the toxic assumptions underlying Lucas's approach to both parenting and problem-solving. His belief that expensive solutions were inherently superior had blinded him to his son's actual needs. His conviction that credentials and cost-determined effectiveness had prevented him from recognizing Maya's expertise. Most painfully, his focus on fixing what he perceived as Ethan's deficiencies had prevented him from celebrating his son's unique strengths. The mathematical breakthrough was just the beginning. This moment would force Lucas to question everything he thought he knew about success, intelligence, and what it meant to be a good father. Instead of firing Maya, Lucas asked her to stay after Ethan went to bed. For the first time in 2 years, he really looked at the woman who had been cleaning his house and, apparently, understanding his son better than anyone else in his life. Maya told Lucas about her teaching background, her understanding of different learning styles, and her recognition of Ethan's visual spatial intelligence. She explained that Ethan wasn't behind his peers academically. He was ahead of them in ways that traditional assessments failed to measure. She showed Lucas research about kinesthetic learners, multiple intelligence theory, and the limitations of standardized educational approaches. More importantly, she helped him understand that his son's struggles weren't a reflection of inadequate parenting or insufficient resources. They were the natural result of trying to force a brilliant mind into an inappropriate educational framework. Over the following months, everything changed in the Carter household. Lucas hired Maya as Ethan's official learning specialist at a salary that reflected her true value. He enrolled in parenting classes to understand child development and learning differences. Most importantly, he began seeing his son not as a problem to be fixed, but as a unique individual with extraordinary gifts that needed to be nurtured and celebrated. Ethan's grades improved dramatically, but more importantly, his confidence soared. He began helping other students in his class who struggled with traditional teaching methods. Teachers noticed his leadership abilities and creative problem-solving skills. The boy who had been labeled as a failure became recognized as gifted, not because he had changed, but because the adults around him had finally learned to see him clearly. This story reveals uncomfortable truths about American education and parenting. How many children are labeled as failures simply because their intelligence doesn't fit conventional molds? How many brilliant minds are overlooked because they come packaged in unexpected ways? Lucas Carter's journey from frustrated father to understanding parent mirrors a broader cultural awakening about intelligence, learning, and human potential. Maya Rodriguez's story demonstrates that expertise and wisdom aren't always found where we expect them. Sometimes the most profound insights come from people whose voices are rarely heard in conversations about education and child development. Her success with Ethan wasn't magic or luck. It was the result of seeing a child clearly, understanding his needs, and having the courage to meet him where he was rather than demanding he conform to arbitrary expectations. Today, 3 years later, Ethan Carter is thriving academically and socially. He still learns differently from his classmates, but this difference is now recognized as a strength rather than a deficit. Lucas has become an advocate for educational reform and alternative learning approaches. He funds scholarships for students with learning differences and supports research into innovative teaching methods. Maya continues working with the Carter family, but now as an educational consultant rather than a housekeeper. She has returned to school to complete her master's degree in special education, with Lucas covering all expenses. Their story has inspired other families to look beyond traditional solutions and expensive interventions to find what their children actually need to succeed. The most profound lesson from this story isn't about math or education. It's about the danger of assumptions and the power of really seeing the people around us. Lucas Carter learned that intelligence comes in many forms, that expertise exists in unexpected places, and that the most expensive solution isn't always the most effective one. Maya Rodriguez proved that understanding and compassion can accomplish what credentials and costly interventions cannot. Ethan Carter discovered that being different isn't the same as being deficient. Together, they demonstrated that transformation is possible when we have the humility to question our assumptions and the courage to try a different approach. Sometimes the answer to our most challenging problems is right in front of us, waiting to be recognized by someone willing to look beyond the surface and see what's really there.